All right, we'll give some people a few minutes to join. Everybody that's in the chat now, feel free to write where you're located, so maybe you can find somebody in the chat that's in the same city as you. Let's see where everyone's watching from. Let's see, Kansas City, Detroit. I'm in Maryland, so I'll add that in there. All right, so in about one more minute, we'll get started. Thanks for everyone for joining so far. We're happy to have you here. Yeah, Washington, Wisconsin, Florida. All right. So it looks like we have quite a few people now, so let's get into it. So thanks everyone for joining. Today we will be talking about how does Grailed work. I'm Josh. I am the CMO and one of the co-founders here at Vendoo. We have two members of the Grailed team here that are going to help us in this webinar and give us all the information that we need to become better Grailed sellers. So let's hand it over to them and let them introduce themselves. We can start with Sarah and then Nate. Feel free to tell us about yourselves, what you do at Grailed, and anything else you'd like to share.
Cool. Thanks, Josh. Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah. I head up the business development or seller success team at Grailed. I've been with the company for 3.5 years. This is my second webinar with Vendoo, so it's nice to be back and meet everybody that maybe wasn't at the last one. And looking forward to sharing some insider tips about Grailed.
Hey everyone, I'm Nate. I've been at Grailed for a bit over 5 years now, worked in a few different departments, and for the last 3 years or so, I've worked with Sarah, helping grow our business development seller success team here at Grailed. So just been around for a while, but also finally getting this department where we want it to be. So it's super exciting to be able to share it with you guys.
Okay, awesome. So thanks for having you guys here. Just for everyone that's watching at home, if you have any general conversation or any comments, you can feel free to keep those in the chat. But if you have any questions that you want us to address while we're going through the content, you can put those in the Q&A section, which is a separate section that you'll see in your Zoom window. And that way we can separate out the questions from the comments in the chat. It makes it a little easier for us to follow along and get you guys answers for those. All right. So, cool. I guess we can jump right into it. So we've met the hosts. So, what makes Grailed unique? Let's talk a little bit about what makes Grailed unique. First and foremost, I'm here because Grailed is my favorite marketplace. It has been for some time now. I was selling on Grailed before I started Vendoo, and that's basically one of my favorite platforms based on the categories that I'm in. I sell mainly menswear, designer and vintage, and streetwear, and some sneakers here and there. So, Grailed is my exact core audience. I actually made a few sales on Grail today, so I'm always excited to talk about Grail with you guys. So I guess I will hand it over to Sarah, but tell us a little bit about what makes Grail unique.
Yeah, so I think that like one of the most unique parts about Grailed is the community that we've built. Our community is one that genuinely cares about fashion and style and connecting with other enthusiasts. So we're not as at like your typical peer-to-peer. We're more curated for style, certain categories, and things like that. And so I think that what makes us super unique is how engaged our community is with vintage and designer, streetwear, and all of the categories that we sell. Additionally, we are, I believe, one of the only marketplaces that does digital authentication on the front end. And so we build a lot of trust with our buyers at the beginning of a buyer or seller's journey with Grailed. So we authenticate the majority of the items that come through our sell form. And so sellers are super credible on Grailed, and it builds a lot of confidence with buyers, and it makes the entire marketplace feel super elevated. So
I think I do want to highlight that the authentication on the front end is huge for the buyers and the sellers. I also buy from marketplaces, and I know that if you're going to spend, I don't know, $200 on a designer jacket, you want to make sure that you're getting what you think you're getting. On some other marketplaces, you might have to have the price might have to be a certain threshold in order for them to authenticate it for you. Or so there's a lot of things that you would have to navigate in order to buy an authentic product on these secondhand platforms. So the authentication that Grailed offers, I think, is huge. Is there anything that you wanted to add here, Nate?
No, I think that's really it, is that, I've been just like you, even before I worked at Grailed, and I've been working here for a while. I started off as a buyer and seller for many years before I ever joined the company, and was super inspired to work here just as someone who really believed in the product and the marketplace, and made a lot of really strong connections. I think, Sarah touched on the community aspect, but I've had people that I've transacted or met 8 or 10 years ago that I'm still, friends with, close with, talk style with. So being able to like be a part of like the Grailed community is really special and something that people are proud of. So that was really something that pushed me to want to work here, and I think really separates Grailed apart from any marketplace.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about who shops on Grailed. Who's your target customer demographic over there?
Yeah, so we do have a little bit of everyone. I've learned that a lot as I work with sellers. I'm always surprised. No day is the same, no seller is the same. But in terms of the core Grailed buyer, we're going to be looking at about that 18 to 34 demographic. The majority of Grailed's buyer traffic does come from the US, about 20% being international. That does wane now and then. The tides do shift, especially with, new tariff laws and everything. But it's usually a good 80-20 mix. We see about 18 million or more user sessions a month. This is awesome. We do see strong traffic all year round. As we get towards the holidays, we'll see it pick up a bit more. So people are consistently coming through, shopping, buying, selling. We have top buyers consistently coming back to discover new inventory and transact. As much as we have like power sellers, we have definitely have these power buyers that come back over and over to transact. They have sellers they trust, categories, and seeing repeat buyers and sellers, the connections they build is really cool. So definitely in this 18 to 34 young adult domestic buyer, but we expand a lot. We see people from all over the world shop, so it's pretty cool.
Nice. What about men versus women? Do you know like the demographics of men versus women? I know Grail started off as a male only platform and then eventually opened up to women's categories. So how is that buyership progressing?
we're still pretty high on men's buyers versus women's. It's still the majority of menswear buyers versus women's wear buyers. But we have definitely seen a shift into growth in the women's wear category and women's wear buyers over the last 3 years. We launched women's wear in fall of 2022, which is actually the last time that we got together for one of these. So yeah, so it's quite a bit on the leaning on the menswear side, but definitely growing to be more even with both menswear and women's wear.
Okay, nice. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about some myths that sellers on other platforms might have about Grailed, or some hesitancy that they have to join Grailed. Um, I'm sure you guys have heard before that some sellers might think it's too niche, like maybe they're not as educated on the type of designer brands that Grailed sellers are looking for, or how do you normally dispel these myths?
Yeah, so I think uh it really the we're I feel like everybody thinks that we're super niche because we do have top selling brands like Balenciaga and Chrome Hearts. But within that same top 10 brand list, we also have Vintage, Nike, Jordan, Carhartt. Those are all still in our top 10 brand list. And so there is definitely something for everybody on Railed. And I think that while there are, of course, categories and brands that don't work well for us, you would be surprised to find how many brands do very well on Grailed amongst, in competition with other marketplaces. I think that in terms of vintage, we would be looking for more, I think, unique things or things like band tees, vintage Carhartt, vintage Levi's, things like that. Not as much of uh, things that not as much of what you would find probably on Etsy. And then our mall brands, as we call them, do very well. So Nike, Jordan, Adidas, Carhartt, things like that. So yeah, I think that it's while we are curated and we do want to be mindful of what we bring onto the platform, we do have a lot more household names than I think one would think.
Yeah, definitely. I sell a lot of luxury brands, but I make a ton of sales with Ralph Lauren and Levi's and Patagonia and brands that I just find in the thrift store on the rack. So the audience is definitely there for it. And I think that you would think that majority of the sales would be coming from these higher designer luxury brands, but in reality, the sales are pretty distributed across all the categories.
Yeah, that's
Um, and then you've touched a little bit on the only for menswear myth. It's not only for menswear. You guys said you've expanded to women's categories 3 years ago, and you're seeing some growth in those categories. Is there anything else you wanted to add on that one?
Yeah, so while we are seeing growth, I think that we do very well with certain women's wear brands and categories versus others. So if you're thinking kind of that lower price point, we would be looking at vintage. And then also what I've just said, which would be like Nike, Adidas, Levi's. And then if you're thinking luxury, some of the more niche brands that we do very well with women's wear are brands like Vivienne Westwood. But then one other thing that I wanted to touch on is that we also do very well in other categories, not just menswear or women's wear. We call it kind of our miscellaneous category, but if you think things like toys, cause, Labubu, which is so popular on every marketplace now, and even certain magazines or periodicals do very well, coffee table books, things like that. So it's not just clothing and footwear. You can do very well with other miscellaneous items that you might find.
Got it. Are Labubu still going strong?
They are, yes. So anytime Pop Mart makes a drop, they do really well. They do really well with us. So yeah, I think that we sell them really well, and then our parent company Goat also does very well with Lububu. But one
Nice.
other thing I wanted to add when chatting through these brands and categories is always search our sold feed so you can see what categories are selling for what price. You can filter it and search for what you have to see how well it does on Grailed.
Yeah, that's really useful information, the sold feed, especially when you're looking for comps for if you're trying to sell an item and you're looking for something similar that sold recently. Um, I like seeing that because not only do you know what it sold for, but you know how long ago it sold, you know how many of them sold. So that's really good information when you're looking to see if the item that you're listing is in demand or not.
Yes, for sure.
All right, so we have a crazy list here of top selling brands and categories. I'm sure everyone in the chat is going to screenshot this or wait for the recording to get this slide. But there's a cheat sheet here of brands that do really well on you guys' platform. I will hand it over to Nate and just see if there's anything on this list that you want to point out or highlight, because this is a good guide for anyone that's
Yeah,
thrifting or
totally.
sourcing. Yeah.
No, yeah, this is, I won't read a list off to you, but this is definitely our bread and butter, our key target. It has our classics in the luxury, Rick Owens, Chrome Hearts, Balenciaga, the stuff that's really fueled our luxury sector for years. Grailed was also pretty much built on this archival and artisanal brands, Comme des Garçons, Raf Simons, Vivienne Westwood, old Japanese designers, stuff that really has niche communities. That's really what we were kind of founded on, and they still go strong today. Emerging designers, we call these like essence emerging designers. So these new younger brands that are coming up that people are looking for, either exclusive that they missed the drop on or a discount, they can find that here. Hype and streetwear. Grailed was built on Supreme. That's not going to change. Supreme's been our top selling brand for 15 years, however long we've been around. So, that mixed in with the new guys like Hellstar, Gallery Department, etc. And then curated vintage. A lot of our top sellers are vintage sellers. They have bulk Ralph Lauren, bulk Carhartt, old Levi's, band t-shirts, have been around, part of Grail's ecosystem for many, many years. So as we start to shift towards the holidays, our categories also kind of shift a little bit. We move towards gift giving categories, as I like to call them. So think jewelry, footwear, luggage. We see a lot of luggage start selling, whether it's small bags or rollers, outerwear, jackets. So we kind of move away from, not necessarily move away, but the emphasis moves towards these new holiday items with a higher sell-through rate. So being able to like see the change start to happen in November is pretty cool that, people start looking for gifts and they think about Grailed. So these brands, a lot of these will be on this list in a few years from now, and we're on this list a few years ago, but this is our core.
One thing that I like about Grailed, I would say this list, if people aren't familiar with luxury or designer brands, this list could be a little overwhelming. They don't know really where to start in some of these, but Grailed makes really good like editorial content explaining the history of some of these brands or explaining the overall aesthetic that these brands fall into. But they kind of give very good like fashion history, I would say, content that kind of lets you understand what these brands are, who the designers are, why they're desirable, why they're worth what they're worth. So I think if you guys are interested in understanding some of these brands or why they're so popular, I think there's really good content in the blog. It's called Dry Clean Only. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, we have the blog, but also on a lot of designer landing pages, there's actually a blurb at the top that gives a brief history about the brand. So kind of a hidden feature. We don't really promote it that much, but it's kind of a cool thing to discover. Like if you look up an Arc'teryx listing, you know what? I'll drop one in the chat for you guys to take a peek at. It has a blurb at the top about the background of Arc'teryx, who owns Arc'teryx. We even have one called "Why is Arc'teryx so expensive?" And a lot of our brands that have been Grailed's core do have these interesting little tidbits about them for people to kind of give an idea of what they're looking at, what they can expect from these designers. So kind of an interesting feature too.
Definitely. Okay, cool. So let's move on to listing. So if I'm a seller and I'm moving on to Grailed, I know I can fill in the form and list my items, but I want to make sure that I'm listing effectively and I'm making listings that are strong enough to actually perform well and sell. So let's talk a little bit about ways that we can optimize a listing on Grailed to see that it performs well and that we actually get the result we want, which is actually making some money. So Sarah, let's start with you. If you want to talk a little bit about titles.
Yeah, sure. So I think this is probably pretty standard across peer-to-peer marketplaces, but something short and clean is the best way to get a buyer's attention. You don't need to reuse the designer on Grailed. So because at the time of listing, you enter in the brand or designer at the top, and it'll show at the top of your listing. So you don't need to reuse it. It'll just look duplicative. You don't need to add the color, the SKU, or any information that you're going to repeat in the description, or that's going to be in any of the other drop downs that you're going to fill out. If there's anything special about your item, though, you will want to enter it in. So if it's a designer piece and it comes from a certain season, of course, put it in there. If you know that what it's named, so what the style name is, I would enter that as well. And then just one call out, don't use titles like what we put at the bottom. It's too busy, and it can feel overwhelming for the buyer. And so just keep it short and sweet, basically, is the best way for you to get buyer's attention.
So I want to make a point there that that's not the behavior, the expected behavior on every marketplace. Actually, some marketplaces want you to stuff your titles with as many characters as possible and as many keywords for SEO optimization. So it's good to point out that Grail would prefer a clean, short title, um, and that would help you stand out more on their platform, not a long title with a bunch of irrelevant keywords or similar keywords, which some people would use on other platforms. So that's good to mention.
Yeah.
Um, Measurements. Nate, do you want to talk about measurements?
Yeah, measurements are, I'm going to call them a recent addition in the last few years, and a hugely requested one. People that are buying designer goods want to make sure they fit. Not only designer, as someone who buys vintage a lot like myself, measurements are really one of the most important things, more so than a tag size. So, whenever you can, if you have measurements on hand, even simple, there's a bunch of input fields, but even if you do the chest width and the length are really the two things that people look for, the waist and the inseam, just to kind of give buyers an idea of what you're selling in terms of fit. That's going to save you a lot of time, less back and forth. People love going measurements, measurements, question mark, question mark. And this kind of saves you a step. It also kind of creates trust. Buyer sees you adding measurements. They know, okay, this is a serious seller. He has the item in hand. He's trying to move it. He wants to be helpful. I don't buy anything without measurements anymore. So, as someone who's purchased 500 plus items on this website, I don't think I've ever bought one without measurements. So, I would absolutely encourage it. I know on eBay and stuff, it's, people put in the description. We have our own fields for it. So it just kind of makes it clear. And also has diagrams, actually, which is nice. So if you hover over the measurement, it'll show you where it's properly measured from. So it'll kind of give you an idea of what you're looking at.
I agree about the measurements, especially on Grailed, because when you're selling in designer categories, it might be French sizing or Italian sizing. A lot of times people aren't familiar with how that fits to their US size that they have in their mind. Or vintage, like you said, a vintage T-shirt might say XL on the tag, and it might fit like a medium just from age and being washed and different things. So it's very important to include those measurements, and then also as a seller to protect yourself. It's better to give more information, always give more information, so that there's no way the buyer can receive it and say, "Hey, I got something different than what I expected." So I think measurements is always great to include. And then Sarah, you can wrap this one up with offers.
Yeah, so as you know, as a seller on peer-to-peer marketplaces, buyers love to negotiate, haggle, send offers. And so there is a choice to not have offers turned on Grilled, but we always highly suggest to have offers turned on, as more than half of the transactions on Grilled happen through a binding offer. And on Grilled, a binding offer means that when the seller accepts the offer, the buyer will automatically be charged. So we don't have to worry about a buyer ghosting their offer or not actually following through with their payment. It does charge the card on file immediately after acceptance, and those offers are valid for 24 hours. You also have the ability to counter offer or send seller initiated offers as well. And then we also make sure that you're not getting any offers that are too low. So a buyer can offer as low as 60% of your current price. They cannot offer under that. They will get an error back telling them that they need to make a higher offer.
All right, that's for all the low ballers out there. Those offers aren't going to work on Grail. Okay, so photos. We pretty much know how to take photos, but maybe Grailed is a little different in some capacity. What stands out about the photos on Grailed's platform, Nate?
Yeah, Grail, as we've touched on, is really about community and peer-to-peer, and people want to see, I'm going to use the word homegrown kind of feel for photos. The white photoshopped e-commerce background photos just never really do that well on Grail. People want to see the in hand. They want to feel, that it's coming from a real person. And we see the best result on these dynamic backgrounds, as we call them. So real photos, even phone photos do well. That's what most people take them on, I would say, but it doesn't have to be anything crazy. I throw mine on, I got a rug in my apartment and I snap photos. So being able to seem like a real person in this peer-to-peer space does wonders for people. So we call them dynamic backgrounds, really anything that's not a cutout white background. We do have sellers that use them. Some do well. It's a lot of other factors. It's something, if you're pulling from elsewhere, it's fine. But if you are net new to Ground and you're like, I want to be the best, we would tell you to take your own photos, try to avoid stock photos, include as many multiple angles and detail shots, especially if you have secondhand clothing. Anything that people might want to see, any signs of wear, any details, that's all super important. So no more just screenshotted front stock photos. We want to see it all.
Nice. So, That's interesting. So short titles, right? And don't not stock images because some marketplaces are saying we want the clean white background stock images. So it's interesting that you guys are pointing these things out. And I hope it's helpful to some people that are watching that might be using the same listing practices across every platform. It's good for them to hear the things that Grailed that would probably accelerate your progress on Grailed. Okay, cool. So I think that's it for photos. Let's move on to some seller tools and best practices. So on Grailed, you have quite a few seller tools. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of these, Sarah?
Sure. So we have a tool that is on the sell form that's called Smart Pricing. So what that means is you will enter a floor price, and our system will automatically drop your price each week until it hits your floor price. And it's a great way to not have to go back and manually drop prices or discounts when you have an item that's been sitting for a while. We also, if you don't want to utilize smart pricing though, you can use bumps where it bumps your listing up to the top of the search feed. You can do 4 of those in a month, and then if you want to do any more post 30 days, you do have to price drop your item in order for it to get bumped up again. And then you can utilize price drop at any time. And then promotional opportunities. So when you're selling on Grailed and after you've been selling for a while, depending on your transaction history and how long you've been selling, you are invited to participate in our quarterly Grailed sale. So this is, we're actually launching one in a little less than a week where we host sellers to go on sale with marketing promotions and home feed placement and push and email support for marketing. And so it's a great opportunity to get your listings featured throughout the year. So we do them for spring, for fall, and then cyber. And then Nate and I on our own also do holiday weekend sales. So as you start selling more on Grailed, you might start hearing from my team about some of these opportunities.
Okay, nice. And then why is it important to build a strong seller reputation on the platform? How does that help them perform better? Nate?
Yeah, I mean it's peer to peer and people know that they want to know that they're buying and selling with real people that they can trust. I mean, Grailed, has strong fraud prevention. We have good authentication, but that's all on the back end. So being able to like see a seller with good ratings absolutely encourages strong sales. If you look through conversations, you'll sometimes see people be like, "Oh, hey man, so you got 3 stars on this last sale. What happened? Like, I'm not sure I want to buy with you now." So being able to maintain a strong seller rating, communicate with buyers, address the post-order issues quickly, and as efficiently as possible, whether it's reaching out to Grailed or whoever needs to be communicated with. This is really going to build your reputation, your feedback. You get seller badging based on your shipment speed, how fast you fulfill orders, your seller score. And sellers take these badges seriously. If they don't have them, if their seller score drops a minute, they'll write in immediately like, "Hey man, I lost my trusted seller badge. How do I get it back? Hey, I lost my speedy shipper badge. How do I get it back?" It means a lot to them. So it's something that sellers take pride in and buyers look for.
All right, thank you. So I'll jump into a few things from the Vendoo end about how we connect with Grailed and some tips that we think could help sellers do better on Grailed. One, which is pretty much consistent everywhere, is consistent daily listing. So trying to get new items active in your closet every day will always help you. It's a good practice that as a seller that wants to meet listing goals or meet sales goals and drive traffic to your pages and make sure that your closet is moving and making transactions, you want to make sure that you keep having new inventory flow in and out as consistently as possible. So Sarah talked about bumping your Grailed listings to get them back to the top of the feed. There's also features like you can drop prices to alert the people that are watching those items. On Vendoo, if you have an item that's been sitting stale in your closet, maybe for 30 days or so, we suggest you can do a delist and relist of a few of those items to get those items refreshed and back into your inventory on days that you don't have new inventory. So I would say, however you have to do it, you need to keep your closet active and keep momentum happening within your storefront, especially when you have people that consistently check to see what type of products that you're uploading. Um, we also, do you guys want to add anything on that one? Did I say anything wrong? I don't want to make sure I'm against any grill best practices. You can correct me. Feel
Oh,
free.
great. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So we have a lot of features built into Vendoo to make the process just faster and easier because we do know that these are multi-platform sellers, and we do know that each marketplace might have slightly different requirements. So we do try to shorten that process for sellers and make it easier for them to list to Grailed specifically, um, as easy as possible. So custom listing templates are very important if you list a lot of similar items frequently. Let's say you sell a lot of jeans, men's jeans. You can create a template right within your Vendoo account that has primarily most of the field already filled out. So it has the category field filled out. You probably ship in similar packaging, so it would have the package weight and dimensions filled out, and some other things relating to those jeans, so that when it's time to list a new pair, you only have to type in 2 or 3 fields before that listing's complete. So that saves you a lot of time. Photo editing and background removal. We'll stay away from the background removal because Sarah and Nate have let us know that the clean white images aren't necessarily going to do well for you on Grailed. That's not what the buyers want to see. But photo editing, make sure your photos are clear. Make sure that users can see the condition and the quality of the product that they're buying. So make sure you take great photos. We do have some AI listing enhancements if you need to come up with descriptions based on keywords or you need to find ways to describe your item. Our AI listing enhancement will help you with that. Um, we have some fields that you can also save as default. It's similar to the custom listing template, but let's say your shipping location, your zip code, there's some fields that are going to be the same for every listing you create. So we allow you to set those as default so that you don't have to ever mess with those again. And then one that's a huge time saver for our sellers is bulk listing and bulk editing. So the ability to make changes to large portions of your inventory at once is really helpful if you're a reseller that's doing high volume listings or you're trying to be productive across the board. If you want to make a change to, let's say you want to change a shipping policy for 50 items at once, you can do that in bulk. Let's say you have a bunch of drafts that you've created and you haven't listed any of them yet, you can select 200 items and list them all in bulk. So we do have some bulk features there for you that kind of shorten that listing process and make things a little easier to manage when you're a reseller that's handling a lot of different tasks. And then I mentioned earlier the delist and relist. You can do that in bulk as well to refresh that stale inventory and get it back up to the top of your stores. So that's it for this slide. Do you guys want to touch on any of these points before I move on?
No, it all looks
No, these are all good. Yeah, these are all great perks.
Okay, cool. So Sarah talked about pricing and offers and how those are important on Grailed. We also have some Pro Tools in Vendoo software, if you're familiar with our Pro Tools, that allow you to manage some of these things directly from the Vendoo platform. So you can set them and forget them. So the smart pricing strategies that Sarah mentioned, you can set those when you create your Grailed listing. If you want your price to automatically be reduced periodically, you can set that right when you're creating your listing. You can also send offers or send automatic offers from the Vendoo Pro Tools platform. You can say every time someone likes an item, send them a 10% offer. You can set that one time, and that can be your default offer strategy for Grailed. That way, you don't have to wait for each individual like to interact with that one. And when and how to adjust pricing. We can give you pricing suggestions. We have a stale listing feature on Vendoo that lets you know how long your item's been sitting. Grailed also lets you know when you're able to bump your item or when you're able to reduce your price based on the last time that you've done that. So there's a lot of things there that can help you maintain that inventory that's just sitting and hasn't sold yet. Good. We also have a fee calculator that we offer for all our marketplaces. If Maria or whoever's behind the scenes can help me out and put a link to that fee calculator in the chat, that would be helpful for anyone that hasn't seen it. But we know that every marketplace has a different fee structure. Some take us 20%, some take 10%, some take 3%. So when you're pricing your item and you want to know if I make a sale on this platform, how much money do I actually walk away with? We have a fee calculator for every platform that calculates the transaction fees and costs that you'll have to pay to that platform. And specifically, we have one for Grailed. So when you're pricing your items, you can say, okay, if I accept this offer, I'll roughly receive this amount, and we calculate that for you. So that's a good feature that you can use here as well. Okay, so I spoke a little bit about these. These are within our Pro Tools. So our Pro Tools are the sending offers and the bumping and sharing that we offer through Vendoo's platform. We have these integrated with Grailed, so they'll work for you. Like I said, you can do the send offers one by one, or you can select offers and send them in bulk, or you can automate those to be sent out whenever a light comes through. So we've talked a little bit about that. And then also the bulk delisting and relisting, you can do those inventory changes in mass across your Grail store within the Vendoo platform and the bulk features. So we've talked about that as well. All right, so let me hand it back over to Sarah and or Nate, and let's talk a little bit about shipping. I know Grailed is a platform that has a lot of international buyers, so I know there's some people that might be concerned about international shipping. So we'll talk about Grailed labels and the international shipping, and then the Grailed protection.
Yep.
Sarah, you can start off.
Yeah, so as a domestic seller, you will utilize Grailed labels for any domestic transaction. So anything within the US, and once the sale is complete, the label is provided to you. We also offer expedited shipping, which is a nice perk for buyers to be able to get their item faster. And that is 3 day and overnight. And when you do sell something, if you have expedited shipping turned on, when you sell something with an expedited label, you are notified that it's an expedited label so that you can get it into the mail faster. We do have a lot of international buyers who are not required to have international shipping turned on Grailed. You can have it turned off. We do definitely encourage having international shipping labels turned on. I know that with de minimis exemption going away and tariffs, it can feel uneasy to ship internationally, but nothing has really changed for an international buyer. So they're super familiar with having to pay duties and taxes where applicable. It is on the buyer to have to pay for those fees, and you choose your shipping price for international shipping as well. And then for Grailed protection, so our CX team or our support team is dedicated to making sure that any order issues that might come up post transaction are dealt with respect to fraudulent activity or other buyer behavior, and they will review everything on a case-by-case basis to ensure that sellers find a resolution and are made whole when necessary.
Okay, nice. One thing I thought about that I don't think we touched on here was payments. So, what are the options for a seller to be paid out on Grailed, and is there anything that they have to do to access all of those payment options?
Yeah, so we utilize Stripe for payments, and if you are currently not selling on Grailed but you want to onboard onto Grailed, then you will be prompted through the flow to connect to Stripe for your payments, and then you are paid within 3 days after the delivery of an item, and it is daily payouts, which means that we will release to the bank on that day, on that third day that after the item is delivered, and it's an ACH transfer, so it'll be automatically put into your bank account. You don't have to go in and ask for it to be transferred or anything. It's automatically um, deposited.
Nice. And then on the flip side of that, what are the options that the sellers have to make a purchase? I mean, that the buyers have to make a purchase.
Yeah, so Stripe accepts all credit cards, and then a buyer can use PayPal, and then we also are connected with Klarna and Affirm as well, so for some of those higher value pieces.
Okay, nice. All right. So, we have about 20 minutes left. I'm not sure if it'll take the whole time, but we'll move over to Q&A. So, any questions you guys have for Sarah and Nate or for myself, let's put those in the Q&A section. We'll answer everything we can. I'm sure for them there might be some answers that they can't give due to privacy policy, like specific data or anything like that. They might not be able to touch on. But any general questions you guys have, we would love to get to those. So feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll start working through them in the Q&A section. I'm sorry. Okay, so I'll start off at the top and just read down, and you guys can feel free. Whoever wants to jump in can jump in. So, is there any plan to expand categories? For example, swimsuits?
So you can currently list swimsuits on Grailed. You need to have the like tags attached and stuff. So no used swimwear.
No, you swimwear. Okay. And what about sizing expansion? Like instead of like custom sizing, it says example like being able to enter a 12 or 14 instead of a waist size.
So for women's wear, the waist size, if you enter the waist size, it'll like below the waist size, it'll also have what the US size is. And so 12 and 14 are US sizes, and it'll have that below it. We don't currently have any plans to make any changes to the way that our mapping is. But if you enter it in that way, it will show that size. And that's one of the reasons why having measurements is also a great way to make sure that your listing is displayed accurately.
Got it. Okay. Um, Aaron asked, what's the ratio of men to women? I guess that's in buyership, maybe customers.
Yeah, so we don't, I actually skipped that one when I was looking through them because we can't answer those exact
Sure,
percentages.
no.
But like I mentioned earlier, it is still, we are higher, on the men's buyers than women's.
Got it. Okay. And here's one for me. I'll take for relist and delist. Does my computer have to be on for this feature to work? So yes, any Vendoo feature that runs on our Google Chrome extension, your computer does need to be on for that feature to work. If you start that process and turn your computer off, it'll just resume when you reconnect to your Google Chrome window. So yeah, that feature will run and it'll process until your computer turns off, and then it'll resume when it turns back on. Someone asked, can pieces have flaws?
Yeah, definitely. Grail definitely prides herself as a secondhand marketplace. Things can have flaws. That's kind of where pictures come into place and having as much as possible. I would strongly encourage you to detail any flaws in photos and in the description. Or if you just put in the description like use condition, please see photos or however you best do it. But I would say photographing them is most important. So yeah, pieces can definitely have flaws.
We always tell sellers that they should take photos as if there's no description, and they should write a description as if there's no photos. That
Beautiful.
way, your bases are covered. You know that your photos are thorough and your description is thorough. So that way, there's no information that can slip through that listing that the buyer won't be aware of.
Perfect.
Okay, cool. Someone asks, how would you say neckties do on your platform? Is this a category that you think could do well?
That's probably about
Vintage neckties.
sartorial. Yeah, vintage neckties. It's probably one of the harder, probably a harder sell. Sartorial isn't as strong for us right now. Um, if you price them pretty competitively, sure, I'm sure that they'll go, especially if they're designer name brands that people are looking for. So if someone's looking for, Brioni, Zegna, old menswear, classic houses, discoverability will be there, but I would not say that they're a top selling category.
All right. So back to hard goods. What about unisex items? How would we list those? I really thought we could only list clothes and accessories. So
Yeah, so
outside of clothes and accessories, can you just walk through some of the other categories that Grailed accepts, and any categories that you don't accept, so we can be clear on those?
yeah, for sure. So I think that like and Penny, no worries, you are not being dense. I get it. We're learning new things about Grail today, but everything does have to have a department. So unfortunately, there's no way to list something as unisex. You do have to choose men's or women's. So I would just choose what is closest to the item. We do sell, of course, outside of I'm actually like looking in real time for great examples for you guys on the Real website right now on my other screen. But aside from footwear and clothing, of course, any accessories, so bags, luggage, belts, glasses, things like that. What I would do, Penny, is I would spend a little bit of time in our miscellaneous category. And what is in our miscellaneous category is a treasure trove of lots of different things. So you're going to find posters, you'll find socks, magnets, stickers, candles, things like that. And so I would spend a little time in there and see if what you have in your resale shop would make sense for our miscellaneous category. But if we were to talk about like how you would categorize it, you would do menswear and then choose miscellaneous.
Perfect. Thank you. So I hope that was helpful. Um, when is Vendoo going to update the Vendoo marketplace form to match the recent changes Braille made, such as eliminating multiple brands and deleting tags? So that's a good question. If we have something that's not up to date, please let us know. Send a message to the help button in the bottom corner on the Vendoo screen. Make sure that our product team is aware of that, and we'll get that updated as quickly as we can. This is a good question that I come across frequently when I'm listing things, so I'm curious how you guys would answer it. But what if a brand isn't recognized in your drop-down box?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, if an item is not represented by a designer in the drop-down box, it probably will not do well on Grailed. Um, if you think it should be on Grailed, please email in help@grailed.com. It will be reviewed. We're always adding new designers. Stuff's always coming up on our page. Um, but that's really the easiest way to put it is that feel free to reach out. We'll take a look.
One caveat though is vintage. So a lot of times vintage doesn't have a brand, and so vintage is the designer.
Yes, good call.
Is there another, is there like a other or something like that as well that you can use in certain scenarios, or is just vintage is what you suggest?
Yeah, you can use vintage, or I believe we still have the design. It's like named designer is the tag. But like Nate said, if it is a designer or like a well-known brand that we don't have as an option, we have I think over 5,000 brands on Grailed, and if it's not listed, it's probably we just did an audit
Yeah.
in the last like 9 months. And it's probably because it actually won't sell well. So we want to make sure that you're protecting your resources and your time. And if there's an item that maybe isn't the best fit for Grilled, and there's no designer that we have represented on our designer list, you might want to pass.
Yep.
I'll give Nate an example that he might be familiar with, but I'm in Baltimore, so we have a brand down here called Carpet Company. It's a streetwear brand that's getting really, really popular, and I think Carpet Company has been missing from the Grail drop-down list for some time now. So
Cool. I'm
just
happy to.
mention that one because I sell a lot of Carpet Company stuff, and it sells well on your platform, even though the name's not there. They still find it in the
I'm
title.
happy to hear that.
Yeah,
That's
so that's a freebie for
out of
you guys
Baltimore.
out of Baltimore. Yeah.
I'm looking at it now. Yeah. Oh, so I get. Oh, sick. Yeah, very much along like the new up and coming like Hellstar streetwear wave.
And when you search it, there'll be like hundreds of listings of Carpet Company, but people are using all kinds of different designer brands because that name's not there. So that's just one thing to
Great
check on.
call out. Awesome.
That's
That's
actually
Cool.
that's a great example. And our merchandising team gets to new brands as much as possible, but that is a great example in letting us know because
yeah,
sometimes
300 sold listings so far, and they did a Vans collab. So pretty sick.
Yeah. All right. So with the elimination of tags and replacing it with the style drop down, how do you recommend using the style drop down? Sometimes I've found that my item doesn't really match a style drop down.
Yeah, I would just try and go as best. I know it's not a great answer, as close as possible. Whatever you think someone that's looking for your item might also be shopping for in that same realm. I'd say that they're pretty well versed in terms of like the stuff that you're gonna expect to see selling on Grailed fits in the category. I know I've listed stuff and I've hit the drop down and be like, maybe it's Western, maybe it's vintage. Do a best guess. It's not a mandated field. It definitely helps get some eyes on it. So I would just go with whatever you think best fits. And, it's a newer feature, not saying that we're not going to add, new ones. There's a chance, as styles come up or if we get feedback that's like, hey, I'm looking for a specific style. But I would say we tried to go as overarching as possible in terms of like stuff that sells on Grailed.
Got it. Okay. This is a longer one, but I'll just shorten it down to is Vendoo going to expand photo room? Um, This watcher is asking. Photo room has a variety of background options and different features, and right now we just have the clean white background remover tool. We don't plan to expand more photo room options, but if you would like that, please request it to our help center. We kind of, if we start to see more and more sellers are requesting us to expand those features, then we'll prioritize it a little bit higher. But for now, we don't have plans to expand the features that Photo Room offers, just the ones that we have currently. All right. So if there's no more questions, guys, I think we did it. Is there anything that you would like to leave the watchers with before we end, and then I'll close this out?
No, I think just thanks for having us. This has been really fun. We always love to connect with resellers and the reselling community. So thanks for the invite. It's always great to connect with you guys.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you guys so much.
For sure. And then I know that we're getting into that part of the fourth quarter where Black Friday and the holiday shopping starts. So is there anything that people should be on the lookout for on Grailed? Anything they should capitalize on? Times to strike where the iron is hot? Let us know.
One thing I will say is if you are already selling on Grailed, make sure that you check your settings in your shipping settings to make sure you have expedited shipping turned on because in the month of December, we'll start promoting listings that have expedited turned on for last minute shopping so that buyers can get their gifts in time. So it's super easy. All you do in the app or on the website is go to your settings and you'll toggle on to turn expedited on. And then you're much more likely for your listings to get merchandised into edits where we're featuring quick shipping.
Okay, yeah, because people want their presents to get to them quick around the holidays. All right,
Absolutely.
makes sense. So perfect. Thank you, Sarah and Nate, for joining us today and sharing all this information. Thank you, everybody that watched live. If there was something from the presentation that you want to go back and look at, or you want to see some things from that slideshow, we will publish this later for you guys to watch on the playback. And as always, feel free to continue sending us feedback. Let us know what you like and what you don't like, how we can make these sessions more informative. We always love to hear from you guys. So thank you for participating. And we will see everyone soon. Thanks, guys. Good night.